yourself, please, for the recording. If that's okay, Mr. Pelgrim. Okay. Your name, please.
Yeah, my name is Hermann-Josef Pelgrim, and I'm Lord Mayor of Schwäbisch Hall since 1997, so 21 years now. And we are twinned with the city of Loughborough more than 50 years from 1966.
Important year.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for giving me your time, first of all, today. I wanted to ask, as a twin town of Loughborough, how you and the people who live here view Brexit.
Well, I have honestly admit that we did not prefer that the British decided on Brexit because, as I mentioned, we have more than 50 years of twinning with Loughborough. We have a very steady exchange of people with the administration, cultural exchange, sometimes in the past family exchange, sports and so on. And we think as a very, very open society that we need a common Euro vision how we address the world, and therefore I think the UK would have been a very good partner for us to look to the common future. And even from our point of view, we think Europe should work even more together than less, and so we were not in favor of Brexit.
Do you understand any of the concerns that people in Loughborough and Leicestershire have about the European Union becoming, for example, too powerful or taking too much control away from individual countries?
I see some concerns, yes. We have had discussions quite a lot, also with our Loughborough friends, but when the Brexit decision was made, we were just in Loughborough. And the day after we came, and we were wondering and had discussions there, and most people there were surprised about the results. So most were a little bit shocked what has happened in their own country. And so we drove there, thought there will be still a vote in favor of further European cooperation. We came there overnight, where it was the other way around, even so that by a very small margin. And the people which we talked to were shocked. So we really did not have that many contacts with people who were really in favoring of Brexit. So we could not really address the arguments then, because most of those which we are in contact with are those who have the same opinion. The same opinion that means it is better to work together and not to split.
What would you say then is the strongest argument for those you haven't been able to address? What would you say to those people?
From my opinion, I have personally lived several years in South America. I stayed 2 years in the United States, lived 4 years in Brussels, and was an international officer of World Organization some years, and so I know quite a lot of countries in the world. And one of my first feelings was when I stayed, for example, in the United States and had contacts with Europeans all over Europe. We have something in common, which is stronger than situations in other parts of the world. Second, we lived in a very relatively wealthy situation in Europe, and we have responsibilities for our people. And the global balance of power is changing. You have the rising of China, situation of the United States. You notice recently is not that stable that they take tasks for us. The situation with Russia is not even simple. So we think as a global commitment, it's better to have a strong, democratic European union which stays for the values which has been developed in Europe over the last century, also coming out from the UK as one of the founders of democracy in the world. So we think on a global scale it would be better to have a joint European Union joined by all parties, all nations, and also on the economic power view, if we address these global changes, I think it's better if European Union talks with one language than with 28.
You are a very powerful politician in terms of both this area, but also in terms of how I see you, because mayors where I come from do not have as much power as you, and possibly not even the mayor of London. But if you had the opportunity, would you be building stronger relationships with Loughborough and other parts of Europe?
Yes, we are really trying to address partnership all over Europe, and we are linked with Loughborough, but we are also linked with Epina, which is a city in France. We are linked with Lappeenranta, which is a city in Finland. We are linked with Samos, which is a city in Poland. From the old days of the German Democratic Republic, we also have a linkage with Neustrelitz, nowadays the new German state member in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. And we have also linkages with a city in Turkey, also to address this democratic process there, which is not easy, as we know, but still on the face-to-face contact with people, you are able to address permanently also, let's say, a view of a Western world on democratic issues in the world. So, yes, we would like to, and we're trying hard to achieve this partnership context, because our world as a city of Schwäbisch Hall is also multicultural, like a city like Loughborough. In here, people of 120 nations live together. We have quite a lot of industry which works with and in the world. So it's a very open society. And this is not a world where people can live together if they deal with products and services. They have also to understand the different ways of thinking, the different cultures, the different behaviors. And therefore, I think it's for us as a city of Schwäbisch Hall, we steadily support the integration of people living here, but also the chance to use the chance of integrate the world in one spot. And for us, the contact with the United Kingdom or with Loughborough as a city is one of the oldest and one of the foremost languages of interest. And it's probably one of the easiest in that way that we could speak in English. It's very difficult in Finland, for example, or in Turkey. But on the language question, there's not that really a big problem. There are other problems which are more obstacles than language.
Well, and you've mentioned those to me before we started the interview. What's really stopping you practically building better relationships then?
For us, it's always some astonishment how the administration is organized. For example, you have the tradition that the mayor is changing every year and has representative responsibilities, but not administrative powers. So if they come and we discuss issues of common exchange, they go back, tell that to the chief executive probably, maybe give some information to the council, but if you try to stable long-lasting relations, next year another one is coming. So this is a very difficult process because there are not steady persons which are in charge of a steady process of twinning, for example. The next issue is we love in Germany the situation of self-governance. That means we have quite significant tax revenues of our own, we have our own budgets, our own responsibilities. And the budgets in the UK for the local authorities are much smaller than we are used to. So they look very often for twinning persons' perspectives to EU funding, for example. This is more difficult to get. We use our own money. We don't look for EU funding for these purposes. So we decide our own how we address these issues. So this is a little bit a problem. And then the last thing is, which has goodies and some obstacles. That means twinning committees. That means people which do it on a base of voluntary work, get some additional money probably from the city, but these voluntary purposes are very unstable over time, and there's quite a lot of heart in it. That's the good part. They're very, very keen to do this, but in terms of addressing the administration of the city, they are not part of the administration, so they are not in daily talk on facing new projects, for example. So systems are changing or are different, and everybody has to have its own rules. Yeah.
It's interesting that you talk about you have a sense of self-governance. Well, that's one of the biggest arguments there's been for Brexit. So do you understand the feeling that a lot of British people feel, that because we already have a centralised government and Europe seems to be controlling that more, we want that feeling that you have of more power and control?
You understand. As I mentioned before, I studied and lived 2 years in the United States, so I'm a little bit familiar with the different meanings of words. And federalism is for you not the same as for us, as a wording already. So that means self-governance, which means the decision from the bottom up, is not one. You cannot take it one-to-one in your language. So it's very difficult to explain it always what it means. And for us, it means the city or the places in the lower level has the foremost way of decision. And then comes the next, the state level, the federal level, maybe the European Union. But we would like to decide major parts for our own. So, but this is not only a question of political wish, it is also a question of funds. Who decides on what kind of money? And you can say that in Germany, for example, the cities and the towns and cities, and they are structural with own money equipped. So I don't have to ask Angela Merkel for anything. Yeah, you know, or I don't have to ask the Prime Minister of the state of Baden-Württemberg for anything. We can do joint projects, yes, but if we don't want to, we do our own. So
the EU doesn't tell you what to do either.
Well, the EU. So in a situation of Schwäbisch Hall, the EU almost has no influence. Well, there are norms. There are always the questions of norms, for example, for fruits and trade rules. So, but this is not our local task. So in terms of a common market, we are part of it, but this is beneficiary to us. But in terms of regulations for local whatever, it's not part. They don't decide for us.
Just finally, that's fascinating. Just finally, have you been to Loughborough, and when are you next coming to see us?
Well, I've been several times in Loughborough, and I will come probably next year because
Brexit or no Brexit?
Well, as I mentioned, we hardly prefer or would have preferred that British citizens would have decided against Brexit. But on the other hand, we are having now decided to make a program for the next half year, very British cultural weeks and so on, because we really want to keep in contact, not only in terms of let's say there could be one task to say, well, they would like to drop out, let them drop out, let them forget about the UK. But we are neighbors. We are still neighbors. We have to get somehow together. And I think it is also our task as local authorities to promote the understanding, even though that to some time of history a little majority of British people decided to drop out. But maybe in 20 years from now the situation has changed again and a new development might occur. And so we would like to keep in contact, we would like to enforce the contact, and we would like also that our people get more known about why the UK has decided as it did, and get more known, more severe known about cultural developments in the UK, and so it's also a little task of educating our own people in order to say, look, UK is not an enemy, it's still our friend.
Mr. Pelgrim, thank you very much for speaking to me today.